Welcome back to Parenting Expert, the show that dives deep into the realities of parenthood. Now, today we have the pleasure of chatting with two absolutely incredible women who are not only mums, but they are also very successful entrepreneurs, the 360 Mamas. They've built a fantastic online community for mums. They offer support, they offer resources, and a whole lot of laughter. So today, joining me are Emma Bradley and Hannah West. So welcome, ladies, to Parenting Expert.
Hi, thanks for having us.
We've got a high in unison there. High five. So let's kind of jump right in. So you both started the 360 Mamas sort of while navigating motherhood. So, what inspired you to create this platform?
We both work in the in women's health field, and a big kind of proportion of our clients are mothers, whether that's in pregnancy, postpartum. But previously, kind of the way that we worked was that we kind of offer our own services and then find ourselves referring to a network or a community of other women's health experts within our area. And ultimately kind of built a relationship through that. But when COVID happened, we realised that not only were people not being able to access our own services as easily, but also the reality of being able to kind of refer and visit a number of different health professionals was probably out of the question. And actually then that kind of led to the conversation that as a new mum, that's quite a difficult challenge as it is to kind of be making appointments for yourself, to be going to appointments outside of the home. And yet we felt really passionately that women needed the information and the support that we were able to offer, but how could we make that more accessible ultimately? And so that's where the idea of the 360 Mama came from.
So it was kind of born from, I suppose, your own experiences, and COVID kind of magnified all of that, didn't it? But are you finding that obviously post-COVID that is still an issue for many parents, many mums?
Well, yes, because, we're still seeing women coming into the clinic every single day saying to us, why don't I know about this information? Why didn't somebody tell me I could do these things to feel better? Because ultimately, a lot of the stuff we're sharing is quite simple tips. It's things about recovery that women just aren't being told. So one of the reasons we started sharing daily on our socials was so that more women can access quite simple information, but be able to actually feel better post-birth.
I think you've made a really valid point. I mean, I've got 3 children for my sins, 3 lovely children, I might add, if they happen to be listening, but which I don't think they are because they should be at school. Hey ho. But I do think that there is a lack of knowledge amongst mums that, if they are struggling, they've got any issues or they need any support, obviously they've got the midwives, they've got the health visitors, etc. But outside of that, do mums actually know that they can access more information, they can access more support, and actually it doesn't cost the earth?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a group of people, mums are very good about sharing knowledge between them, aren't they? And so we kind of know that quite often mums find their own little network of people to support them, whether that's through, NCT groups or previous groups of friends. But that was always how people were finding us locally. So coming to us for an appointment, it would always be because my friend saw you or my friend recommended you, which is fantastic for us. But actually, we kind of kept questioning, why is that the way in which they're coming to access these services, which are, quite honestly, services that any woman post-birth should be benefiting from? And why are they not kind of accessing that because someone within the health profession has directed them that way? And obviously, there are so many completely wonderful things about the NHS.
Oh yes,
And so it's,
absolutely.
but it's just a case of recognizing that within this particular field, postpartum is often kind of an afterthought, and there is so much care, so much information available while you're pregnant, almost to the point where it can sometimes feel a bit overwhelming. But actually, if people were just given a little bit of advice to allow them to plan for what happens when the baby actually arrives and how do I take care of mum rather than just how to take care of baby, really we could probably resolve a huge amount of problems that we do see within that community. So yeah, I think that's a really kind of important conversation, and we're hoping that by pushing it out there on a social media community, it kind of does what we know happens within small groups of mums, and it just goes to kind of these much wider audiences.
And I think,
and sometimes, sorry, sometimes it's just literally knowing that these things exist. It's not even necessarily that these women need to, start delving into masses and masses of information. Just knowing that massaging your scar can make a big difference. Just knowing these things and knowing that where to go and where they can look afterwards, so that it's in their mind for when they're recovering, is just such a game changer.
It is, and it's back to that. If you don't know, you don't know. It's not because you don't want to know. You just don't know that, this kind of thing is available. And I think you made a really valid point. Pregnant, particularly for the first baby, everything revolves around looking after yourself whilst you're pregnant. Everything revolves around what you're going to do when baby arrives, and how you're going to get them to sleep, etc. But actually, your body's gone through something pretty traumatic and more so for many people. And it is about, what can I do? I've had a C-section. My scar's really uncomfortable. What do I do? Do I go to Google? Is there anywhere I can go and get some proper advice? Do I want to access my health visitor? And I think parents and mums, they're not necessarily prepared for after the birth. It is so much focus on before baby arrives.
Yeah,
So often we're being told from people, from and my own experience, my NCT classes, it was almost like C-section wasn't even a thing. But then there was absolutely no discussion of anything post when they'd actually given birth. And again, I'm not bad mouthing anybody here. No. It's just these things just aren't being talked about and aren't being considered for some reason. That's the thing.
So why? Do you know why? Have you done any research? Is it because resources are so stretched in the NHS?
I think that's definitely an element, and I think it's probably something that does need to come to a wider discussion to kind of understand that you aren't necessarily going to get the absolute full spectrum of care within the NHS these days, and there are lots of things that will happen that will mean that you can have great confidence in your birth experience or whatever within that environment. But if you really want to kind of give yourself the best kind of course of care, it may be realistic to start having a conversation that some of that might have to be something that you fund yourself, for example. But I do think there's kind of two sides to this. One being that there's absolutely that element that things are not offered through the NHS, and therefore we're not being given that information because the service isn't available. But there is this other side of things about why is it not more widely discussed? I think because quite a lot of the topics are potentially still considered to be taboo topics. Mm-hmm. So as my role, I'm a pelvic health physiotherapist, so I deal a lot with topics such as incontinence, painful sex, pelvic pain, constipation, all of those types of things that potentially women aren't necessarily wanting to be that open about to a group of friends. And so a lot of these things do happen, and we know that they're very common, but they're not normal. They're never normal for those things to be long-term problems. And for the majority of people, they're things that we can solve. But people feel embarrassed to kind of talk about it. And therefore, unless they're signposted to the right professional that can help them with those, they kind of just live quietly with those symptoms unnecessarily, which is a real shame. And, hopefully we are trying to kind of break that a little bit by kind of talking about those topics more openly.
And it certainly feels like things are being spoken about a little bit more online. And obviously we're in that world. So for us, it does feel like it's being spoken about a lot. But yeah, I definitely feel like there's a lot of, oh, well, that's just normal. That's just what happens after you have a baby. And a lot of women just kind of accepting that that's just what's going to be happening with their body now. And although these things are really common, they really aren't normal. And, it's frustrating for us because we know these things can be made better with quite easy things, and we just want women to have this support.
I think, and for me, it's something after I had my first child in particular, I could have really, really done with. I had a very traumatic birth, and lots and lots of stitches, but I also broke my coccyx. Um, and I completely just suffered in complete silence because I was just like, well, this is normal. Is this not normal to be in this amount of pain? And I am going back. Oh, how old's my oldest? He's 17 now. So I am going back a while, and hopefully things have changed. But it was you've had a baby. You suppose this is normal. This is normal. But actually, if you can alleviate some of that discomfort, if you can almost understand what your body's going through, that's going to help everybody, isn't it? And the wider family.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we kind of say, don't we, oh, hopefully things have changed and things are improving, but
Have they?
I mean, yeah, the reality is that the sort of conversations that we have within our community is very much that people are not being provided with that support. One of the kind of biggest changes that seems to have happened quite recently is that the 6-week GP check is either being removed for a lot of people. There's a lot of areas where they've combined that with, and that is now an 8-week check that happens at the same time as your baby's vaccinations. And so, of course, in that scenario, your focus is on the baby. You know, that situation for some people can be quite traumatic. They might be very nervous about that. A lot of focus on how's baby going to feel after vaccinations. So is that really the time that you can feel that you can really speak openly, process information about your own recovery? Or is it, which is what most people say, a very brief kind of 5-minute discussion that maybe revolves around contraception and then straight into your baby's well-being and, you know, all of your focus being on the baby? And those two things previously were two separate appointments. So the question of whether things are improving, I think, unfortunately, I'm not convinced by that. And that is something I think that does need to change.
I think the thing that is how improving is obviously with more and more people being online and influencers sharing their own journeys, it's such a beneficial thing for people because although these people aren't necessarily experts, the fact these people are speaking about things and sharing their experiences is at least making people more aware that these things aren't normal. So possibly, hopefully, although maybe there's not necessarily the support there, these people are becoming more aware and maybe advocating for themselves a little bit more.
And I think obviously there's a lot more social media and, you know, that's going to continue to grow and grow and grow, you know, whether it's platforms like Parenting Expert, you know, your social platforms, influencers, bloggers, etc. But there's also that pressure, isn't there, on social media about that picture perfect image of parenting. And, you know, how do we combat that pressure, you know, that parents and that mums should be coping and, you know, they should be, I suppose, bouncing back and embracing motherhood. But actually maybe underneath that picture perfect image is somebody who's struggling.
Yeah, I mean, a big part of what we try to share, and certainly what our postpartum recovery program, which is all based online, is about, is very much kind of about helping women to thrive after birth and helping them to feel better. So really taking the onus away from how you look necessarily. And although that's a part of it, you know, we do include exercise within that. We include that because exercise as a recovery tool and a rehabilitation tool is almost essential for everybody. But there can be this real kind of crossover with, oh, you're going back to exercise because your goal is to lose weight or your goal is to have a body that looks a certain way. And so exercise therefore can get a little bit of a bashing because you know, we're all trying to say, oh no, you know, that's not the purpose here, etc. But I think that's where it comes to be really important that we are hugely grateful and hugely respectful to these people that do have these huge platforms who are willing to talk about the less glamorous side of things. But one thing that we kind of do want to keep encouraging is that for those people to share their experiences, to give people an insight into different versions of normality, but also then not to try to be the expert, if that makes sense. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
we really hope to be able to kind of provide a platform where we can say, look, kind of, we can come at this from a professional aspect with our expertise and give you the advice that you need from a health professional, because everybody's experience of postpartum recovery is going to be different. So even if you have the same symptoms as the celebrity that you're looking at online, it doesn't mean that your recovery is going to be the same thing. And that's just something that we kind of sometimes feel gets a little bit mixed in the message.
Yeah, and I think, sorry, go.
No, I think that was.
No, I think one of the things about sort of the social side of it, and, you know, looking at those influences is, you know, everybody's got a different journey. You know, everybody's got a different way of recovery, and sort of thinking postpartum, there's obviously the physical support, but there's also the mental support, isn't there? And looking after the mental health of new mums. And is that something that you've come across? Has it changed since COVID?
Yeah, I mean, I think mental health is definitely something that needs to be better addressed, particularly in the community of new mums. We often find that there is a huge crossover with physical symptoms in alongside what their kind of mental or emotional state is. And as you've discovered and as you discuss, if you've had a traumatic birth, not only will that impact you physically, potentially because of some things that might have happened in the birth itself, but if you're really struggling to process that mentally and you have a lot of trauma associated with that situation, then quite often that plays a huge role in how your nervous system is behaving, and your nervous system often kind of manages your experience of pain, and all these kind of things. So very often we do have or find a big crossover between what we provide as kind of therapeutic physical recovery as physiotherapists, as scar and massage therapists, and then work alongside therapists that can help you with your mental state, your emotional state. But definitely it's something that should be an open discussion.
And Emma, I have a question for you. So you're a Pilates teacher. How quickly can mums go back to exercising, and, you know, what are the benefits of, you know, doing something like Pilates?
I mean, first of all, what I do as a Pilates teacher and physio is that I do a sort of combined physio-led version of Pilates, which means that we're able to modify the traditional Pilates exercises and scale them back and gradually build you back up. So from a postpartum perspective, I wouldn't really be recommending someone goes back to their average Pilates class within the first 6 weeks.
Yeah.
But certainly from a kind of modified point of view, if it's led by somebody who is trained and understands the postnatal body, then actually parts of what we teach in Pilates can be introduced very early on in postpartum. So the breathing techniques, the gentle core engagement, the pelvic floor engagement, all of which you can perform while lying on your back in bed. Actually, you could introduce them from, day 1, day 2. So this is kind of where we talk about, if you had the opportunity to prepare a little bit prior to your birth and you learned some of that version of exercise even in pregnancy, then it would give you the opportunity in those early days to just start to introduce it gradually. But as a kind of, wider scale, normally I would say if you're going back to a postpartum Pilates class, for example, typically that would usually start from around 6 weeks. But we tend to really encourage you doing some early rehab prior to that, because actually you can really benefit and your healing can kind of improve and speed up if you're doing some things that support it.
You can see a massive improvement with scar recovery as well. With gentle movement, your scar can lay down in a more organized formation. You're less likely to get problems with the scar. Things like numbness and sensitivity, the more you move that area, the more you touch that area, the less likely you are to have problems. So movement is such an important thing to get in from day one, and it really doesn't have to look like, maybe the movement that you were doing pre-pregnancy, pre-birth.
I think that's really interesting, because I think as sort of as a non-specialist, you think if you've got some kind of a scar, it's almost like we shouldn't touch it. Don't move. Be careful, be careful, be careful. Yet, obviously, you're a scar massage specialist. Can you explain, what that means? It's something that's very, very new to me. I think I've probably grown up with that. Oh, it's a scar, keep it covered, go, don't touch, don't touch, don't touch.
So absolutely, and then we shouldn't be touching wounds when they're healing. So in those early days, I wouldn't advise anyone to be poking and prodding their scar, touching it unless their hands were clean. But even from day one, you can be technically massaging, and that doesn't mean touching the scar. It can mean placing your hands over your scar through some clothes and doing that breathing work that Emma was talking about. Mm-hmm. It's a lovely way to reconnect with the area and also just getting mobilizing. And like we talked about, when we touch the area, we're more likely to get those nerve endings that have been moved around and separated and cut through during the birth. They're more likely to start regenerating in the area, and then we're less likely to get issues like numbness and sensitivity. You can be massaging above your scar and towards your scar, again, almost from day one. As long as you have, if we've had some severe bruising or anything, you might want to completely avoid the area. But actually, you could be stroking very lightly through a thin piece of clothing, just gently brushing towards your scar. And that's going to really help bring everything that's needed to speed up that healing process, take away the waste product. And it's going to help with sensation and numbness, but it's going to get everything healing a lot quicker as well.
That's really interesting. Now, Emma, I see on your website that you offer a mummy MOT, and I'm intrigued. What on earth is a mummy MOT?
So a mummy MOT is a kind of branded version. So as a physiotherapist, you have to be qualified to a certain level, and then you can go on to do additional training. And the mummy MOT is a body of physiotherapists who are qualified to provide that postpartum assessment. And that includes an internal assessment of your pelvic floor, which kind of sets it apart from most other assessments. It's sort of what it sounds like, really, a full body assessment after birth, which is typically kind of recommended from about 6 weeks post vaginal birth, about 8 weeks post C-section. But actually, it's never too late to do it. So often I do see mums that are mums of much older children, and they find out about it and think, oh, is it too late? But actually, there's almost always still things that we can work on. And we do, just as an example, we kind of do an assessment of your posture. We look at the way you move. We check your rib cage position, because often your ribs move in pregnancy. We assess for any separation of the abdominal muscles. We teach you how to reconnect with that space. We'll assess your scar and start to introduce you to some early scar management, like Hannah said. And then we do an internal assessment, which allows us to check how your pelvic floor is functioning, teach you how to do exercises that will benefit you personally, because different people need different things, be able to check and assess for any signs of prolapse, which may kind of have a role to play in what we advise you to go back to, things that you might need to avoid for a while. And basically, by the end of it, be able to then put a full program together for you, whether that's exercise, might include a bit of nutrition, it might include a bit of scar massage, but stuff that you can take away from your appointment, be working on at home, to just help to kind of speed up your recovery. And it's like, you come away from it just feeling like you really understand your body as it is now, and then you get the advice that you need to get it back to where you want it to be.
Wow, that just sounds absolutely phenomenal. I wish I'd heard of that when I had my 3 children. It just sounds like it kind of ought to be what everybody does.
And it is
wouldn't that be
in lots of
amazing
other
if everyone
countries.
just got that?
Yeah, I mean, in plenty of other countries that is provided as standard.
Wow.
Unfortunately, the UK is not there yet, but you can absolutely find a local practitioner. The Mummy MOT itself has its own website. It has a directory of qualified practitioners, and you can just put your postcode in and find a local practitioner to you.
So I was very interested. You said you didn't, it doesn't have to be straight after birth, and that you get parents with, mothers with older children coming to you. Sort of, how old? You know, is it something that mums realise, you know, perhaps everything's not quite right? Is it 12 months down the line, or is it longer?
It can be longer. You know, the other thing certainly that I see a lot of in clinic is actually mothers that are starting to enter a new phase. So perimenopause, the menopause, for example, where we get another kind of big shift in hormones. We get quite a lot of changes to the pelvic floor. So they may get symptoms at that phase of their life that they haven't necessarily experienced earlier on in postpartum. But quite often, once we delve into it and we go through the assessment, there's a lot of things that are left over from childbirth, or things that we discover and they say, oh, well, yes, I have been experiencing that, but I thought it was just a normal part of having a baby. And so they've kind of just come to the process later on. But one of the hugely positive things, and I know Hannah will say the same about scar massage, is it is never too late to do something about it. Of course, it's brilliant if we can get it right at the beginning and start early on, but it's also never too late to make a change. So I would encourage women absolutely to seek that out if you're struggling.
Absolutely. Just don't suffer at home, because there really is help. There really is.
No, I think that's really interesting, and I think that is a massive message to go out to, new mums, older mums, that there is help out there, and however, there must be so much that people have niggling, thinking, is this linked to childbirth? Even 10, 15 years later, you've made me think, and I'm now thinking, well, is this down to my child's birth? Is this down to what happened with my second child? And, I'll probably talk to you afterwards about it. But, I suppose your body is amazing, and I think your coping strategies are amazing, but sometimes we need some help.
Absolutely. I've had women come in the clinic with scars that are like 14 years old, C-section scars that are 14 years old, and they're still experiencing pain or certain issues with it. They've gone to the GP, they've had it checked, they've had a scan, they've been given the all clear and pretty much told, sorry, that's all we can do. And they've come in the clinic and we've 1 or 2 sessions together, and the pain is usually resolved by then. Wow. And it's just incredible that, even a scar that has matured, you'd think it wouldn't be unchangeable at this stage, but it isn't. We still can treat issues like pain and a tight scar, sensitivity. It really can be improved.
So, your platform it's just a fantastic resource for, mums. And okay, I've got a question for you. How on earth do you manage to juggle motherhood, running your business, and finding time for yourselves? Because it sounds like you're very busy.
It's incredibly full on. At the moment, we are also writing a book.
Oh.
Which is, we're writing a book on C-section recovery, which is due to be published in January globally, which is super exciting. And we're coming to the end of writing that, which is quite a relief, to be honest, because it has been very full on. But do you know what? What drives it for me is a real passion. And I know it's the same for Emma. It's this passion that we just really, truly believe women need this information. They deserve this information. And we know that by posting daily on our socials, we are helping women get that information. So that's what does it for us.
So that sounds amazing. So not only are you sort of running your day-to-day business, you're juggling children without dropping them by the sounds of it, which is amazing. And writing a book.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been a busy time, definitely. So I'm not sure that we have the answer yet.
I don't think there is an answer.
No, definitely not. But a lot of it is, as Hannah said, like, we love what we do. I love being in clinic. It's my favourite place to be, because that one-on-one time with women, and those light bulb moments that really come almost in every session are just amazing. And if we can kind of provide that over a wider scale, then, why wouldn't we want to do that? So, yeah.
Well, it's definitely something that sort of comes out, your passion for what you're doing, and your wish to educate and share the knowledge that you have, for mums not only local to you, but further afield.
Thank you.
But that's brilliant. I just want to say thank you to both of you for sharing, your stories, your insights with our listeners. It's been great having you on the Parenting Expert podcast.
Thank you so much for having us. We
really
enjoyed it.
I hope you'll join us again. So, for more information on the 360 Mamas, you can visit their website at www.the360mama.com, and it's 360 number 6 We will put all of the links in the show notes, so you're going to be able to find those. And of course, you can follow them on social media. And again, we'll put all the links in the show notes. So Emma and Hannah, thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.